assistance to the people they need it. There's nobody that can replace them right now in the middle of the crisis.
Well, let's bring in Nizar Farsah, who's a lecturer in international affairs at George Washington University, based in Washington, D.C. Nizar, just your reaction to this breaking news that the Israeli Knesset has passed a law to ban UNRWA from operating inside the country.
Well, of course, it's very bad news. As your colleague said, it is catastrophic. Basically, more than half of the Gaza population are refugees that are dependent on UNRWA's services, education, health, and food stipends. But it has been a long time coming. The successive Israeli governments, in fact, not just this one, were eyeing the UN. They've seen that the UN is one of the bodies that has helped Palestinians to continue to survive and keep their culture and keep their identity and staying in Palestinian territory, even if they are refugees. And therefore, since October 7th, the urgency of getting rid of as many Palestinians as possible has become bigger for a lot of Israelis. In fact, many of them see the current war, the current genocide, as a redo of the 1948 catastrophe. They wanted to finish the job. They want to finish the job they didn't finish in 1948. And the UN, the UNRWA specifically, is a big part of why or how the Palestinians are able to stay resilient.
And Nizar, do you think the international community, because we saw there was a big pushback from the international community when there was, well, not all of them, let's just, very few countries at the beginning with regards to the funding of UNRWA. And then there was, they started to fund it again. Many countries did a U-turn. But with this very point now, what do you think the international community's reaction is going to be? We heard the US spokesperson, State Department spokesperson, Matthew Miller, saying that they're deeply concerned about this, and especially of the timing right now.
Of course. So one is, it's not a question of funding, it's a question of access and ability to function. The UN agencies, any UN agency, cannot function in a country without the country's consent and cooperation. And since the Palestinian territories are under Israeli occupation, access and ingress is in Israel's control. They cannot do their job without first getting approval and sanction from or license from the Israelis. So it literally makes it impossible for them to work. Now, can the international community? I mean, the international community can compensate for funding, sure, but they cannot compensate for Israeli law. And the urgency now is the fact that we are already a year and a few weeks into a genocide, that part of which was of the policy was starvation. The UNRWA is the only or the biggest, largest organization that has the network, has the capacity, has the experience to be able to provide services at scale. And hampering it is going to affect a large population.
And Nizar, so often we've heard UNRWA staff that speak to us on this program and say, we're barely able to do our job. On their knees practically, hardly any aid is getting in. So how much more difficult does their work become now, if at all? Just to work with collaboration with other agencies, do you think that still will be a possibility?
I mean, that's a complication. If I'm not mistaken, taking this step by Israel means that the UN itself needs to take action against Israel, because Israel is not supposed to just ban a UN agency that could work with it. So I think that the main problem is actual access. I think it makes the work of UNRWA.
Nizar, sorry to interrupt, but is this not a huge red line right now? The UN Security Council are meeting right now in New York, discussing Israel's attack on Iran. A UN agency now, they've tried to defund it before, but now to stop their work right now. Surely this is a red line. And this timing, 8 days before elections, again, it seemed to be the case correct me if I'm wrong, that they can get away with anything right now with 8 days to the US election. No one's really looking. Netanyahu can do anything he wants. That's what it seems.
Definitely. So on one side, it's the elections, and they know that they can get away with anything. But it's also the fact that the international community is busy with other things. And unfortunately, yes, it is a red line, but we've seen other red lines being passed, and the UN does not have the capacity to take action, or is unwilling to take the kind of action that's necessary to deter Israel. And Israel knows that, and that's why they take this action.
That's incredible, and especially as they're meeting right now. How does this then benefit Israel? Just to quote the foreign minister of the country we're speaking to now here, the UK, David Lammy, he said that if UNRWA is brought to its knees, that would be a very serious event indeed, and it's not in Israel's interest to do so.
Well, in the sense that when you starve people, when you deny them services, that's a ripe environment for more extremism, for more radicalization, and you make people have nothing to lose. And when people have nothing to lose, they are more willing to take bigger risks. However, that's not how Israel sees it. Israel is intent on depopulating as much of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank as possible. So it is taking this action knowing that there is going to be a reaction, and that, in my opinion at least, is the whole idea behind it, is so that it catastrophizes the situation to a point where it can expel Palestinians. And I genuinely believe that that's the whole goal, or the ultimate goal.
A catastrophe, absolutely. Another goal, probably. Thank you so much indeed for speaking to us, Nizar Farsah, live there from Washington, D.C. Really appreciate your comments and time on this breaking news.